Spending $85,000 of your own hard-earned money to buy a house you have no interest in living in sounds like a financial disaster. Unless making that massive purchase is the absolute only way to legally evict the woman who tried to erase your mother's life. But anger is a very strange, slow-burning fuel. It makes you wait patiently for the exact moment the wind shifts. My name is Maya. I work in residential acquisitions for a real estate firm in Chicago. It's a demanding, numbers-heavy job, requiring a cold head, a sharp eye for legal loopholes, and absolute precision. I wasn't always this guarded. When I was 11, I lost my mother to breast cancer. She was a quiet, creative woman who worked as a seamstress out of our basement in a small Milwaukee suburb. Before she died, she gave me a promise wrapped in heavy, cream-colored silk. It was her own hand-sewn wedding gown, adorned with intricate pearl embroidery she had stitched herself. She told me that when the time came to walk down the aisle, wearing it would mean a piece of her was walking with me. 2 years later, my father married a widow named Linda. When Linda moved in, she didn't act out the role of the overt, stereotypical villain. Her approach was modern. She used the phrase unified blended family to mask her intentions. Linda avoided physical cruelty. Instead, she used the systematic erasure of Eleanor's memory to establish dominance in the household, beginning with the photographs. When I confronted Linda about the missing photographs, she smiled patronizingly and told me it was time to look to the future. My father, completely drowning in his own grief, stood in the kitchen and passively let it happen. At 18, I left for college. I worked late nights at a local diner to pay my own tuition, because Linda had convinced my father to divert the family's financial resources entirely toward her biological daughter's private schooling and cheerleading trips. At 22, I finally secured my first entry-level job and my own apartment. I drove back to my father's house, ready to retrieve my mother's dress and her vintage cherrywood jewelry box. But when I pulled down the folding stairs to the attic, the hook in the far corner was empty. I ran downstairs and demanded to know where they were. Without even looking up from her magazine, Linda admitted she had sold the heirloom dress and the jewelry a month earlier. She used the cash to replace molding tiles in a guest bathroom. I tracked down the buyers in Milwaukee. The dress had been sold to a local theater group who chopped it up for Gothic costume lace. The buyer of the ring had melted down the gold setting and reset the sapphire for a modern client. The pearls were sold to a passing tourist. My mother's physical legacy had been entirely destroyed. That afternoon, I blocked Linda on everything, told my father I would never step foot in his house again, and permanently severed my ties with the family. This graph tracks the steady upward trajectory of the next 8 years of my life. I channeled my grief and anger into my work. I learned how to analyze property values and negotiate aggressive acquisitions, building a completely independent, highly profitable real estate portfolio. But if we add a second line to this chart to track Linda's financial standing, the picture changes. 2 years ago, my father passed away. Linda inherited the house, but because she had refinanced it multiple times to fund her lifestyle, the equity was drained. Within a year, she was forced to sell, quickly burning through the remaining cash until absolutely nothing was left. Desperate to maintain her carefully curated online image, Linda refused a cheap apartment. Instead, she rented a picturesque, whitewashed stone cottage in Cedarburg, boasting on social media about finding peace in her dream retirement home.
What Linda didn't realize is that the Cedarburg real estate market is incredibly small. One Tuesday morning, an off-market lead crossed my desk. The elderly owners of that exact stone cottage needed a rapid, cash-only liquidation to cover declining health and medical bills. This flowchart illustrates exactly how to mask property ownership. I created an untraceable single-member Delaware LLC, injecting my own capital into it to execute the cash purchase. I named the company LM Legacy LLC, using my mother's maiden initials. By combining the available cash with my professional acquisitions expertise, I legally purchased the exact roof over the head of the woman who had wiped out my past. This is a standard clause on a Wisconsin residential lease. Because Linda stubbornly refused a long-term contract in hopes of finding a wealthy partner, she was on a month-to-month tenancy. This allowed my new LLC to issue a perfectly legal, unquestionable 30-day eviction notice without providing a single reason. The notice was taped to her door on December 1st. Linda immediately took to social media in a panic, begging for prayers and repeatedly emailing the faceless corporate landlord for a holiday extension. The rental agency, strictly following my instructions, denied every single request. On December 31st, the temperature in Cedarburg dropped to 15 degrees. At precisely 11:30 a.m., I pulled my car into the snowy driveway of the cottage. Linda was outside, stubbornly arguing over the price with the movers she had finally hired. I walked up the creaking wooden steps of the wraparound porch and knocked. When Linda opened the door, I didn't wait for an invitation. I stepped inside to conduct my final walkthrough as the new owner. I opened my folder and handed her the property deed. I watched her eyes process the name printed next to the LLC registration, LM, Legacy. I explicitly told her that Eleanor Miller was the name of the company that now owned the roof over her head. She shrieked, accusing me of being cruel for kicking a widow out in the middle of winter. I simply tilted my head and mirrored her exact words from a decade earlier. I told her I was just moving forward, clearing out old, dusty clutter to make room for something new. If she stayed past noon, I would file an emergency eviction and ruin her credit permanently. At exactly 12 p.m., she threw the brass keys onto the wooden floor at my feet, realizing she had absolutely no legal recourse against the consequences of her own past actions. I watched her moving truck pull away, leaving tire tracks in the fresh snow. I went back inside, sat by the fireplace, and looked out at the garden. I didn't feel a rush of malicious joy. Instead, I felt a deep, quiet sense of peace that had been missing for 8 years. I had no desire to live in Cedarburg. I hired a contractor to paint the front door a soft lavender, my mother's favorite color. In the spring, I rented the cottage at a below-market rate to a young family who wanted to grow vegetables in the garden. Linda had to relocate to a small, cramped 2-bedroom apartment near a loud highway in Milwaukee. Her credit was stretched, her savings were completely gone, and her carefully curated social media image was permanently shattered. The wedding dress is gone, the pearls lost to a drawer, the sapphire melted into history. Those objects will never return. But as I look out at the open Wisconsin highway, I realize Linda failed. She sold the fabric, but she couldn't touch the person who survived it. Every time I drive past that exit, I see the lavender door, and I know some things are simply too rooted to ever be sold.